Welcome to the First Responders Wealth Network. Our mission is to help all first responders change their mindset towards money and educate how to build long-term wealth through real estate investing. Are you ready?
All right, here we go for another interview. I got Kimberly-Marie here with me, and actually we know each other through a mutual friend and actually through some multifamily investing. So it's neat to have you on the show. Not that you're a first responder, but the fact that you've been able to accomplish quite a bit on the side. So doing things part-time, working full-time, and still accumulating your portfolio and being really successful at real estate investing. So that's the message I want to get across. But before we get going, I just want to introduce you. So you're you're the owner of WAS Investments. You're also a physical therapist, fitness professional, entrepreneur at heart, and really just, like I said, just proof that saying no time or I don't have enough time really shouldn't be said. So let's get going. You can tell your story, and I think it'll inspire a lot of people to get involved.
Yeah, definitely. So I first got started in real estate in the residential space. So it was after I bought my first house, and I bought it in a gentrifying area of Indianapolis, neighborhood called Fountain Square. So through living in my area, I was able to really learn the market and see what was going on because there was so much growth happening. Mm-hmm. So I ended up starting out in flips. I kind of fell into it. I found a perfect flip property about a half mile away from where I lived. And it was a complete rebuild, gut to the stud renovation from the foundation all the way up. So it was a ton of work. So after that flip, I had a couple other flips going, but I was like, man, I really want to get into something more passive because it wasn't my full-time job. I was doing other things. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, so now I'm going to look into the rental side of things. So a little bit more passive of an approach. So within those same areas, I was looking for rental properties. And because I was living there, I knew what the demographic was, who was trying to move there, what types of features they were looking for in homes. Like people like fenced-in yards, for instance, because a lot of people have dogs, ton of dog-friendly restaurants and all those types of things. They like to be walkable. Just different features like that, because I was personally living there, so I knew. And after I had a handful of residential properties under my belt, I was thinking, man, if I'm doing all this work for a single family home or a duplex, why don't I just buy a building and get 20 units, 40 units, 100 units? So cool. I then transitioned into multifamily commercial. I closed on my first 23 unit apartment. And after that, it was like the easiest thing. I was like, whoa, this is awesome. I want to do this 10 more times on a 10x scale. So now that's kind of where I'm at. That's my focus on what I'm doing in the business.
That's awesome. So that really is it seems to be a common gradual progression for investors. You start off residential, you start maybe getting into bigger units for the cash flow, and then they kind of graduate into the multifamily commercial space. So 23 units, that's amazing. So let's go back to first off your first flip. So you said you went all the way down to the studs. That's quite the endeavor or project for your first attempt, don't you think? Who taught you how to go through those steps or even think about getting into that?
Yeah, it was just kind of trial by fire, really. Because I really knew the area because I was living right in the middle of it, and I kind of just like became obsessed with it. I was like, oh man, who's building that over there? Who's moving in? Like, what's happening around me? So I saw that one, and it was a really good price, but it was because, hey, there's $8,000 of back taxes, and there was a fire, and there's a ton of liens. So I kind of knew that taking it on, but I didn't really know how to do any of it. So like I said, it was just trial by fire, ton of networking with different contractors, and just kind of really learning as I went. But I kind of had it from a different eye because I was already a homeowner. Gotcha. And I lived in the area, so I knew what type of people was looking to move there and what type of features they wanted. Okay. Rather than, I wasn't like a quote unquote investor, like out of state, just trying to flip a home. I was like, hey, people like smart home systems. People like garages. People like, a full second story rather than, only an 8-foot ceiling. So just different things like that. So it was just kind of figuring it out as I went.
Cool. So you didn't have really like a, quote unquote coach or anything like that. Did you just kind of start surrounding yourself with people who maybe were doing it, and then you decided to do it yourself?
Right. Exactly.
So you kind of had that ambition in you just to go get it.
Yeah. Definitely can't be afraid to fail there. You just got to do it. I feel like a lot of people freak themselves out and, oh God. And I'm not going to lie, that did happen to me at first because I thought, like, and my mother, she is a huge supporter of my business, and she's also an investor with me. And so I called her up one day. I remember this still. I was like, oh man, I'm just going to sell this house. I can't do it. And she's like, oh, no. And that's actually how she became an investor.
Nice.
She's like, all right, I'm coming in. I'm taking out the back taxes. Now I'm a partner. Like, you're not backing out on this. So
Cool. Yeah. So was she your first investor then with you?
Yeah, she was my first investor.
Nice.
Yep.
So how was that sales pitch, talking to mom, getting her to be involved in one of your deals?
Yeah, I don't think it really started out that way. I think it started as, hey, Mom, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to do this. And she's like, all right, sweet. And so
that's awesome.
I just kind of kept educating her on it. And then, like I said, it just kind of happened that she's like, oh, well, now I'm a partner. Hey, you're not backing out on this. Let's go. And then I really started like, hey, here's what I'm looking at. Here's my vision. And I started telling her kind of what I've learned about the area. Mm-hmm. And she knew. She's like, hey, you know what you're doing. I trust you. Like, because I literally figured out like everything, like totally obsessed, like with the whole area. So she really believed in me, and she went 100% all in on me for that. So super grateful for that.
Awesome. So that was your first flip. And then you said you did multiple flips on that. I know you did a few on the same street.
Yeah. So it was all on the same street because it was really close to where I was living, but there's a dividing line at the time in my area of State Street. Anything east of State is the hood. And I was one block east of State. And so everyone was like, oh, I don't know what you're doing over there, And so, but I was over there every day. I would go after work, and I met all the neighbors. So it's like, hey, there's Chuck who lives there with his wife, and next door to him is his daughter, and then Larry and his son. And I mean, these people are fine, but their houses might look a little scary. But, so they got to know me. I got to know them. And it was totally safe, totally fine. And so Robert's son comes up, knocks on the door. Hey, you want to buy my house? We're going to move. Yeah, sure. And then the house next door was condemned. We ended up hunting down that guy on the west side of the city. He sold the house. And so I ended up kind of buying literally every single house surrounding that house. So then when people would come for open houses or when they would do a walkthrough, I was able to say, hey, literally it's the same developer for all of these houses. Here is actually what the house is going to look like. Here's the type of features we're putting in. So here are your neighbors. Mm-hmm. And so I was really able to control the market that way. So then the girl who bought it, I'm still really good friends with her. She's like, yeah, like she watches out for everything, and she's really happy now. So cool. It was just all right there.
So what was what's the cost down there? Because I know no matter where you are in the U.S., different states, and even up here, it can vary massively, right? So what was the entry point? What kind of rental budget? And then what was your sale price roughly? In those type of projects.
Yeah. The first one I did really, really well. I made about $60,000, which is really high. I got in really low. It was about like $30,000. And then there was about $8,000 of back taxes. And then I had to go to court over all the liens and stuff. And I think I ended up being all in around $250, $240, and then ended up selling at $318.5 in the middle of the winter.
Oh, good for you. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, shout out to my broker, Corey Gardner, for the broker. He sold it in the middle of the winter. He knows his stuff. So yeah, I mean, that was crazy. But I mean, now of course everyone's east of state now. There's not a ton of deals left to be had. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can find a flip pretty comfortably between $60,000 and $80,000.
Nice. Yeah, that is comfortable. That's good. All right. So then you went into more of a passive mindset. And what was your thought process on that, or why were you trying to get into more passive? Is it just your time? You want to alleviate your time, or what? Yeah, a little bit of that. As I continued to educate myself on what was really out there, and as I continued to grow, as I got older, my goals changed. I originally got into flipping in general was because I went back to school. I went back to get my doctorate degree. So 3 years, and I calculated about $100,000 of debt that I had already paid off the first time I was in school, in grad school. So now I'm like, okay, I'm an adult, 3 years of part-time school, full-time work. And how am I going to I don't want to be in debt till I'm 60. Mm-hmm. So, hey, let's flip a house. And I did awesome on my first one. And I had a ton in the pipeline for the next ones, but it was just so much work for me. It was really hard to study, to go to work, to, manage contractors and the city and permitting and variances and all that stuff. So I was like, hey, you know what? I just want something more passive. And so I feel like for a lot of your listeners, that might be what their goal is. Hey, they have families. They're first responders. You don't want to be on site, 5 days a week, making sure your contractors are showing up, making sure they're not cutting corners, all that type of stuff. So
that's kind of how my goal changed.
Absolutely. Did you have all contractors doing all your work right from the beginning, or were you kind of a little more hands-on from the...
I was in there knocking down walls.
Okay,
I pretty much gutted the entire house. It was crazy. I had this old truck, Chevy K2500, because I meant to have a contractor, and I was, like I said, I trial by fire. First contractor I had, he said, I walked him through, he said he would take it on, gave me a budget, whatever. And then it was like, oh, this other project's, oh, it's going to be another 3 months. Oh, now we're looking at 6 months. And so I'm like, I am not just going to sit here. So I'm at least going to go knock down some walls.
Good for you.
But that's the extent that I've done it. I am not a skilled trade person. I am in healthcare. I'm a PT and physical therapist only. I don't know how to work anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, after that, now I have a good team of contractors that has a design team, has a field manager, the general manager above all those guys. So now they do everything. I'm not in there with a hammer anymore.
Awesome. So then you really made the transition into passive, but then you said you went out here and you got a 23 unit. So that's a massive jump. So where did that learning process come? Because you just don't go out and buy a 23 unit. I mean, you got to be educated. Is that through maybe certain programs or coaches, or did you just say, screw it, and I'm a go-getter, I'm going to go do this?
Yeah, I pretty much, again, was just to screw it and go. When I decided that, it was a couple of years ago, and that, every time on New Year's and my birthday, I always reflect. And I'm like, all right, what do I want to look back on this year? And that's when I was saying, hey, I want to get into commercial. So I only want to buy multifamily properties. And in my head, I'm like, oh, I want 8 units this year. And that was my big goal. My gosh, 8 units. And by March of that year, I had closed 6. And it was 2 duplexes and 2 more single family. And I'm like, man, I don't feel like I've accomplished anything. This isn't what I want. So I'm like, okay, I need to make something larger. And so I'm only going to be looking at, hey, I need 15 units now. I need to look at 15 unit buildings. And so I called my broker, Corey, up, and I said, hey, here's my goal. Here's what I've got in the pipeline. Here's my budget. Here's what I'm looking for. Let me know. And he's like, all right, let's do this then. So he's a monster in Indianapolis. So he just ended up cold calling an owner, found it exactly what I wanted, walked through. We had that thing under contract and accepted LOI within a week or something ridiculous like that. So I was like, oh man. So
this is real now.
Yeah, it's real. So I ended up offloading one of my properties on that same street that I bought. And then it was a rental. So I offloaded that to a different investor who was going to flip it. And then I just put all of that money into this apartment. And
gotcha.
It. Yeah.
Okay. So what's the price point down there, and where is it exactly, you said, for a 23 unit?
So my 23 unit is a little bit north of downtown. It's an area called Mapleton Fall Creek. And I really like that area because Indianapolis just built a red line system, which is an electric bus that goes right through that neighborhood. Nice. And you're right between downtown Indianapolis and another area called Broad Ripple. So, and that's by Butler's campus, Marion, a bunch of colleges. I went to University of Indianapolis, and it kind of connects all of that. Because if I were to drive to Broad Ripple, it'll take me 20 minutes or a $25 Uber, which is silly. And then you can't park and this and that. So Mapleton Fall Creek is pretty much right between that. It's a C-class property. It's really high occupancy. It's I think I'm at 100% right now, maybe 1 vacancy or something.
Good for you.
But it is C-class. And it was, I think I bought it at a 10 cap.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
Yeah.
So has that been, sorry, what's I always ask people what the price point is, because I usually people don't care. What was the entry point for that? What was the cost for a building that size down there at that time?
I got it for $625, I believe, or $645.
Nice.
So
nice.
Under $650.
Yeah. And how many years ago was that? Or was that just this year?
It was about a year ago now. Beauty.
Cool. So what was the vacancy of that building when you first bought it?
It was still pretty high. I think you only had 2 empty. Yeah.
So it was cash flowing. I love the Midwest for that.
Yeah, it's
so many
great.
areas up there.
Yeah, Indianapolis especially. It's great. It's a huge tech hub, tech scene. When Exact Target was acquired by Salesforce, that was a $2.5 billion acquisition.
Nice.
So there's a ton of growth here in Indy.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's been the biggest challenge for you since you've had to take on a building of that size? You got full-time management or part-time? How's that working in there?
Yeah. So I have a full-time manager for that. I don't do anything. And that's why I'm saying bigger is always better. And I'm why haven't I been doing this from the beginning? Because all of my single family, I personally manage. So I have, oh gosh, I don't know, like a handful. I have a couple duplexes, like a couple Airbnb units, a few single family long-term rentals. But you know, if you leverage like a mortgage on that and you don't own it outright, your whole thing kind of shifts off as far as like what you can afford. And so like a manager taking 10% or whatever every month is like,
Yes,
you know?
yes.
So it's a lot more work for not that much more money. If you just think about, hey, if you just 10x this and buy a building.
Yeah.
So I don't even look at that building. Literally, I have a meeting with my property manager every once in a while if I have a question on one of the things that he sends me, and it's super easy.
That's amazing. And it's complete opposite of what people think, you know?
Complete opposite, yes. The only difficult part is the beginning, like closing the deal, getting to the closing table was the hardest thing. I mean, especially for me, I mean, and I didn't realize that there's all these resources out there and all these people that you can network with and learn and grow. And I've done so much growing since then. And, you know, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm looking at these spreadsheets. Like I would get like massive migraines nightly trying to underwrite this. And
that's what Dave Tupin's for. You just call him up and he can help you underwrite.
Shout out to him. He is a great person for that. Yes. So yeah, so I was trying to do it all on my own at that point. But even still, getting to the closing table was the hardest part. After you underwrite, after you do the inspection and all the negotiations and this and that, it's so simple. I literally never get called for anything, like at all. Like why? You know, they call the property manager versus a single family. It's like, hey, my toilet's not flushing. Oh, the sewer line's backed up. Oh, like yeah, whatever. I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, and I'm at work and you know, you gotta manage all the other people and all that stuff. So
what's the rents there for something like that in that C class area, like roughly the average?
Yeah. I think the average, so they're all 1-bed units with one studio. And I'm pretty sure we're between 600 to 650.
Wow. That's good. I mean, considering you got 23 units at that price entry price, that's great. And so your cash flow is really, really good. You got great yield there.
Yeah, it's been great. And like I said, I mean, the reason I wanted to get into that was because I was going back to school. So there was a portion where I had to not work for 6 months. And so I'm like, all right, I have my own mortgage and bills and all the things so how can I sustain myself? And that building replaced it. I was totally fine. I didn't feel at all like stressed out at all.
Well, I think you have maybe a little more ambition than the average person, which is pretty awesome to connect with people like that. And you've made the comment before, the 10X mentality. I know we've talked about it before, but just like kind of really thinking bigger and stop thinking small. And that's a perfect example of where you did go so much bigger. And it's actually been easier for you than the single family stuff that you've been doing.
100%. I see that a lot with people. And I think that's a lot of the naysayers in real estate. First of all, it's difficult for them to get their head wrapped around that large of a number. Like, oh my gosh, or wow, like $500,000 or $3 million. Oh my gosh. And it's like, what if, you know, you can't make the payments or whatever. And it's like, well, no, you're not, that nothing's coming out of your pocket. You're not doing anything. It's all by the tenants. Like real estate's the only thing that you can literally put $1 in and have something worth $4. It's the only thing.
Yeah.
So you could totally leverage that. Absolutely.
That's massive. So what would your suggestion be then? I know, again, my audience is more first responders, but it's exactly kind of where you were at. It's like, I can't do this on the side. I can't learn this stuff. And I'm not suggesting people go out and just buy a 23 unit without any help or assistance, but obviously you had to transition or like graduation steps along the way of getting to the next level. But so just getting started, what would you maybe suggest to people who are wanting to do this on the side if you're working full time?
I would say the first thing is to figure out what you want to focus on and educate yourself. That is the first thing I did before I started running all around buying everything. I mean, I was able to pull the trigger extremely fast when either I found a deal or Corey found a deal for me because I knew the area so well that I eliminated a ton of the risk. So I would say, first of all, just educate yourself, figure out what you want to do, because there's so many different things that you can get into with real estate. I just personally chose single family. And how I did it was you can look for pockets around where you live and in your neighborhood to buy. You can start small. There's nothing wrong with that. And then down the road, when you know you have a good buy in a gentrifying area, you can leverage that down the road and refinance that or get a HELOC on it. And then do that again, buy another single family, or you can just keep refinancing or keep, you know, leveraging what you have already and then buy something bigger. Because I mean, essentially that's what I did. I put a HELOC on my primary residence my banker hates me. I refinanced 2 times in like 8 months because it just was so good. So I was like, oh man, I'm going to do this HELOC, and then I'm going to do a cash out refi, and then I'm going to do this. And I did that with one of my rentals too. I refinanced in 4 months, and I was able to leverage that. Like, I mean, gosh, I think I got an additional 30, 40 grand just from that one refinance.
Nice.
So then, you're able to just take all that and put it somewhere else. And I mean, and it really, if you know what you're doing, it doesn't take that much brain power.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not much like, oh, I don't know, like, is this going to be bad? Or, because hey, no, this is a good deal because of these reasons. I know this. So bam, then you're able to confidently make that decision.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. Like when I talk to people out in your area, and I'm actually invested in a 680 unit down. I was telling you about in the Indiana area.
Yeah.
And so that was actually my first LP investment. So my first passive. And
that's awesome.
to hear about what the price points are in some areas of the US compared to even up here where I am, like things have gotten crazy. I mean, to buy a 23 unit where we are, I mean, you're looking at like at least $4 or $5 million at least. Right. Wow. So it's like, and then when you look at the price point for rents, it doesn't add up. So
the cap rates are just all out of whack.
Yeah. So a lot of people think, buying single family homes is a great thing, but as soon as you start looking at the cash flow, there isn't any. So people are starting to get more creative, like you said, Airbnb or multifamily, and they're finding ways to create more income for themselves in the property, but don't eliminate the idea of going outside your own backyard, whether it be a few hours away, a couple hours away, or even out of country. Like there's a lot of Canadians I know that are investing down in your neck of the woods or just down south of the border because of the opportunities that are down there. So awesome.
Definitely.
I love that.
I definitely agree with that. And on that note, it's really important to network with the right people and get yourself a team there so that hey, this person is working for me, because you aren't boots on the ground. So you have to know that, hey, who are your boots on the ground? You got to, it's really important to have good rapport with them, good relationships, so that and you can trust, and they can trust you back that, hey, we're making a good decision. This is good. You can run the numbers and all that type of stuff to have good trust there.
Yeah. All comes down to the numbers and your return on investment, that ROI, that's everything.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
Cool. So what's next for you then?
I would say, immediately for me, there are 2 things. Number one, I'm going to finish my current projects that I have, because I do still have a handful of flips that I'm doing. Once I'm done with that, the second thing, I am going to then have the resources to level up and be able to buy either partnering or buy it on my own with my own resources in a bigger building. I really would like to have 100 plus units in the next 6 months.
In the next 6?
I would like that. Yeah.
All right. We'll check in. I like you. You're such a go-getter. It's great to hear. That's awesome. Well, I'm sure you will be able to do that. No problem with your track record. And it's funny, Dave said you're a rock star, and hearing your story, you definitely are.
Oh, thanks.
That's cool.
Appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, how can people get in touch with you in case they want to get a hold of you, maybe some advice? Is there opportunity there for people, or you just want to share your story?
Yeah, absolutely. I am on Instagram. My business page is at Red Door Renovation. And from there, you can find my other page, _Kimberly_Marie. And anybody who's wanting to get into the Indianapolis market, I would highly recommend my broker, Corey the Broker, at Corey the Broker on Instagram. He is really, really good with all Indianapolis market, and he's pretty much the only one I work with around here. So it's a great area.
All right. How about that? I'll even leave his information on the show notes as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Definitely. Highly recommend.
All right. Awesome. All right. Well, again, I just love this story. Dave passed you on to me. We connect through a lot of mutual friends within the multifamily space.
Sure.
So, we're all on the same team. So I just like to share your story, and I know it'll resonate with a lot of people, just that example of you can do a lot on the side. So, and if you get the right instructions or help or even coaching, there's no reason why you can't. So
yeah, absolutely. And definitely anybody who has any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Kimberly. I appreciate it. And I can't wait to hear back in the next 6 months about your 100 plus unit property.
Yes. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Cool. All right. Take care.
All right. You as well.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate and review on iTunes. Also, check out our website at 911wealthnetwork.com or contact Dave directly at 911wealthnetwork.com. Stay safe out there.